Oh, Alara's there. Hello, hello. We are live, I guess. We should be. Let me see. Hey, Alara, good to see you. Dennis, good to see you too. And I see Brooke there. Uh, we're also live on D Live, so we're good to go. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Today, we're going to have a topic about the transgender community because um, I think it is. It obviously has been hijacked in the political sense, and we never hear about the whole topic from those people that really deal with all the stuff surrounding it, and they are being attacked in return for it because and the struggle is real. So have it's been so politicized and so divisive. It's just not funny, and this is why I want to give it a platform. And it's very important that people can speak out and also tell about the stuff that nobody hears about, because those parents screaming, oh, my child is a boy or a girl, because at their leisure, for I don't know, because it's a trend. It's so wrong. Anyway, hey Angela, good to see you. Nicole, good to see you. Mel and Elisa, good to see you too. But yeah, today we are with Beverly, with Airika, and with Laina. And so I'll let you yourselves introduce and tell a bit of your backstory. So let's start with Beverly.
Just get myself unmuted. Hi, everybody. If you didn't catch me on Nicole Frolick's podcast the other day, I told a bit of my personal story, much more in depth on everything that led into my decision to transgender when I was 28. I'd struggled with it for quite a while. There was a lot of factors of religious programming, gender roles, stereotypes, all that kind of stuff that really played into the thought that I had to become a man to be with a woman, and really having a hard time wrapping my head around anything other than that kind of concept. After 4 years of being on testosterone and living as a man and going through all that, and there were some fantastic experiences in it, not to diminish it in any way at all, because it was very eye-opening in a lot of ways and was very helpful for me. But I really got to the point that I realized that it wasn't the fix-all for everything that was wrong in my life. And that for me personally, I needed to take a step back and look at what decisions I had, or the factors behind the decision that I had made and what had played into it. And was I really gender dysphoric, or was it, sexual abuse from my childhood, or the perceptions I had around male and female stereotypes and roles, or was it something completely different? So I took a step back from it, gave it some time, decided to take a break from it, and kind of finally got to the point that I decided to just stop it and really work on myself and focus on loving myself and learning more about myself. And really now it's just kind of a matter of trying to talk to people about it and get some awareness around the fact that there are a lot of people that kind of just get sucked into it as, a trend or something that they think is just going to fix all their problems with their own identity issues. And it's kind of being brushed under the rug, medically speaking, that they're not looking deep into a person's past history, their traumas, their maybe their upbringing, things like that. They're not really going back and digging into the root issues a lot of the time. There are plenty of doctors who do, and I don't want to, make it seem like there aren't. But as a kind of a generalization, the whole system kind of seems to just give people a pass that you can walk in and say, I'm trans, and just start getting on hormones that are going to permanently change, your secondary sex characteristics, and some of those will not revert back. And especially when we're dealing with topics of like young children being kind of given this option, it's very concerning for the future. So at this point, I'm just kind of telling my story, helping people understand some of these things so that kind of as a collective, we can work on improving the whole system for the future and making sure that the people who are going to benefit from it are going to get it. But the people that are just kind of getting sucked into it are going to get put on the right track and get the help that they need as well.
Yeah, I forgot to say, but I do recommend watching the show from Nicole Frolick, where she shared her whole story. I will actually put that in the link below, which I forgot, but I will do that afterwards. So if people want to see that, it's quite mind blowing. And yeah, it's very important that people are aware of what's going on. And it's a very, I think it's a serious topic. This is your health we're talking about. So, Airika, tell your story.
Hi, my name is Airika Dolner. I know it says Art with Aim. That's artwithaim.com is my organization. So I come from a little bit more like an unusual background. I was born in the 70s, 1976, and I was convinced my whole young life that I was a boy. I insisted on being called Eric. I had come out to my family when I was really young, asking for a sex change. I was confused and disoriented my whole childhood to trying to fit in. I made up elaborate stories about how I was a boy and I was identical, or I was a twin, and that I had a sister and I was Eric. And the days that I had to wear a dress, I was Airika for all of my classmates. And so I went through all of these changes throughout puberty where I didn't dream as a female ever. And it was extremely disorienting, especially in that time period. It wasn't talked about at all. And then when I went away to college, I got very, very ill with an autoimmune disease. And I lost my body practically overnight. And I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't bathe myself at certain points. I couldn't function. And I remembered questioning, because when that happens, you go through a kind of dark night of the soul where you question everything. And I got to this point where I questioned my choices because it was so early in my sexual life already that I got so ill and lost my body that I wondered spiritually, had I made this mistake to not appreciate the body that I had? And I did this whole evaluation of what was the most important thing. Was it living in this identity where I didn't understand or feel comfortable inside of my body, even though I translated as a beautiful female and everything looked normal on the outside, but inside I was tortured. And now I was very, very ill with dis-ease. And I was losing my body. I couldn't draw. I was at art school. I was like losing everything that I had fought for, my scholarship. And over the years, I decided that my health and regaining my health and stability was more important than the dysphoria that I was experiencing. And so I started this journey that caused me to realize all these things about chemicals, and my dad being in the military and fought in Vietnam. And I, trying to heal myself, found out I had all these chemicals in my blood. And then I started evaluating, could those things be affecting me in my health and my wellness? And through that experience of 14 years of finally healing myself in my early 30s of my illness, and I haven't had any rheumatoid arthritis in all of these years, I've started to learn so much about chemicals and our exposure to these hormonal disrupting chemicals that were saturated in plastics, all of these things. And that's how I healed my autoimmune disease. And I, through that process, gained a lot of acceptance of who I was and realized, is it my physical natural body that's the problem, or my own engagement and the society around me? And perhaps even the chemicals that we're eating, drinking, breathing, affecting us and playing a part in this dysmorphia that so many people are having. And then studying strategy, I have to ask myself, are they now, because they have these advanced chemical reactions that are happening around the world and in certain regions a lot more than others, are they just doing a cover-up job partly? Or is there some type of subtext here leading us to the transhuman agenda? These are all things that I question deeply at this point. And I've had a very I have so many stories that go into this, and it definitely plays a part because our sexuality is such an essential part of who we are and how we engage with the world. So I loved Beverly. I loved your interview the other day. It was very, very enlightening. And one of the things that you were talking about that I totally wholeheartedly agree with is how taboo it is to be able to speak on these topics. Like there's been such a perversion in the mainstream narrative. And I'm so glad that we're taking this time to have like more of a heartfelt exploration on the topic from perspectives that are very divergent from the popular perspectives, and having real people that are having a trans experience discussing their journey. This stuff needs to happen a lot more talk needs to happen on this topic, because it's definitely influencing the young people. And I can say, coming from the 70s and being in the gay community, coming out at 15 and struggling with all these things very early in life, that it is a lot more prevalent as a conversation than it ever was when we were younger. And I don't agree that it is simply because they were too afraid to come out, because I've known transsexual people for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with many different factors. And there's so many different layers. And the taboo that's been put on it is intentional and strategic, in my opinion, in order to kind of destroy any type of real exploration into the topic, because you're canceled immediately as soon as you say something that is unpopular or perhaps derails the popular narrative. So anyway, I have to put myself into a box. I would say if I had to, I would label myself as an artist, but to give a background would take a lot more hours than we have right now to tell you all of my sub stories and different things that I've done for work and things like that. Because I definitely haven't lived inside the box, having been disabled for so long and having to deal with survival and doing that in my prime of life. Definitely has made me live a very atypical path. So for right now, I think that's a pretty good introduction. So Laina,
I think
I'd love to hear from you too.
There is something to say for also from the spiritual point of view. If you were born in the body that you're born, maybe it was supposed to be that, right? And I can see that with you too, as you know, your stories, because it's kind of a spiritual awakening for both of you. It has been, actually. And Laina, you to me are just an alien. I always say she's nor a man nor human. Or nor a man nor a woman. She's just an alien, right? Because she looks like one too. I love it. But
did I not say that last night to you?
I always say that. So Laina, start your story so people get to know you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So, like, as long as I could remember, I had like dysphoric feelings. Although I was kind of messed up in early childhood. It's a long story, but I didn't recognize those feelings for what they were until I was like 20. So, after like, I took a whole 8 years to work things out in my head, try to figure out what I wanted for myself. And if I had like to work up the courage to actually come out. And then, 28, 29, I started like the process. Everyone was pretty accepting. And I started on like, I think transitioning for me has been very healing in a way. It has rebalanced, sort of developed, like cultivated more of a healthy balance of like the divine masculine and feminine energies. So like it's about finding my balance, right? So of course, I fell into the trap of having to take pharmaceutical drugs. And recently I've just, and thank you, Airika, by the way, for the inspiration to do this, but recently I've just decided that I've had enough of them, that I think spiritually I would be doing better if I was not on them. So I decided to taper off of them and replace them with more natural alternatives. Like I have no plans to detransition, but I do plan to more consciously embrace the sort of like traditional sort of third gender healer role. That is,
wow, that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because it's yeah, really, because that stuff is so messing with your bodies, and I think also to stay on your spiritual path, it will interfere with it, I guess, right? And I don't know, actually, you can speak for that, but yeah, can you tell like how you were born and what your decision was on transitioning? Did you do operation or not? Just to clarify for people.
I did want to get an orchiectomy, but I've decided now that's probably not for me, since I'm going to be embracing more of that third gender role. I do have, rest now from the hormones, and I'm happy with that. Definitely happy. So again, no plans to detransition. I just feel way more comfortable in a feminine role. So.
Wow, it's nice that you can accept that, because these are the new times as well, that we can, you can be who you are, without having to change the whole body. Obviously, for aesthetics we can, but when it comes to the need to complete transition, and in a way, I think maybe this whole, trend about people talking about it and hijacking the whole thing, maybe that actually has brought this to you guys to become more go within and search for your answers there. So in a way, maybe it's a good thing this all happens, right?
Everything happens for a reason, as they say.
Right. So can you guys tell me how you go through these times where it's being hijacked, how you've been treated, how it is perceived, and what you think yourselves about what's going on? Let's start with Laina.
Okay. So I think there's definitely an agenda here. I feel like, and I think Airika and I were talking about this at some point, I don't remember when, but I feel like the cabal has like an agenda to hijack LGBT and trans people, because traditionally in like traditional societies, like it's all over the world, really. We are traditionally considered to be highly spiritual, healers, very intuitive, and the Kabbalists would obviously be threatened by that. So, I think they put out all this like propaganda and sort of subtle mind control that you have to be on hormones, you have to have surgery. And well, we all know what the hormones do. Like, they're disruptors. They will disrupt that sort of mind, body, spirit connection.
Yeah.
So
actually, I saw this past year a documentary about people that were had a sex change because the parents did that when they were born, and because they had, they may have they are hermaphrodites, so they have both genders. And so the parents decided to immediately operate and decide what they wanted the child to be. The traumas that came out of that was just heartbreaking. And I was so shocked that that was actually very common with all these people that were born with two genders. So either the genitals were one gender and then, they had a uterus or no, all that stuff. And that ties a lot in with this, because I think they try to disrupt, people in any way they can. Therefore, also that side of humanity, I guess. So what about you, Beverly?
Well, I think that part of the issue that is happening is that you have people that are basically, like you said, kind of infiltrating something that would naturally be something that could be worked in. It's like the gay rights movement. It wasn't about get out of our way, we're going to take over. It was about, we just want to have equal rights. We want to be able to get married and have kids and work a job without fear of getting fired. And on, kind of with the trans people that are really taking it super seriously and they want to transition to the opposite sex, they are kind of in that same boat of, we just want equality. We just want to have a space that is okay for us and not to be judged or anything. But there's kind of this new wave coming in that's just, they're much more extreme, and it isn't about, even biological gender anymore. Oh, biological gender doesn't exist. Yes, it does. That's it's a scientific fact. You can't argue that. And they're wanting to shoot down. Yeah. They're wanting to shoot down all that stuff, or just to be able to argue the fact, if I say today I am biologically a man, you have to accept that I'm biologically a man. I'm not biologically. So I mean, and I don't know exactly what the deal is with all of that, but it is very damaging to the people who are taking it seriously, and it's going to be good for them. And then too, it goes back into the medical side as well of allowing that to happen. I heard a story the other day about a lady who had I believe she had really bad endometriosis, and she was trying to get her hysterectomy removed. In the place that she went to try to get it done, there were trans people that were in line ahead of her, and they were not giving her a medically needed hysterectomy and favoring getting trans people in there to get their uterus removed and, all that. And so she actually ended up going along with it and faking that she was trans, didn't have to have, anything. She just basically was like, oh yeah, well, I am trans. And they're like, got her right in there and got it taken out. And I'm like, this is ridiculous on a medical level, that there's that much carelessness and flippancy going on with it, that you can just walk in and say, I am this, and they're not challenging that. And so it's just creating this kind of free for all. And then there's people that are trying to use the umbrella of transgenderism, because really transgender it relates to your identity with your birth gender. So it could be that you don't identify with your birth gender, you identify with the opposite. It could be that you identify somewhere in between, or a mix of the two. And so they're kind of trying to get under this umbrella of like trans species. Ooh, I'm a dog, except that I'm a dog, or people going by it pronouns. I'm like, some of this stuff is demoralizing and dehumanizing, and you're trying to blanket it in with people who are actually seriously trying to do something. And then anytime you try to speak out about, for example, detransitioning, you get blasted as you must be transphobic. And it's like, no, this is my story and I have a right to tell it just as you have yours. And you definitely don't have the right to try to police information just because you don't like it, what it's saying. There are people who have done fantastic. And it's not to say that somebody detransitioning thinks that it's the right thing for everybody. It's everybody's right to do what they believe is right for them at that point in time in life, as long as it's not harming anybody.
I'm amazed how deep this goes, that it even goes in the medical by what you just said about this woman, and also in sports, because now, the transgenders are hated because, but then there is these wrong transgender that want to be, seen as biologically male and are in women's sports. And I'm like, and it's almost like they're asking to for transgenders to be hated. And, it's so wrong. It's so wrong because those people are literally, I would almost say they became transgender just to create divisiveness, which obviously is not the case, but, they go with this agenda.
Well, and I don't think that they realize that they're going with an agenda. I think they're just really super sucked into their echo chambers, and they get into these little groups of, we're all trans here. And so, we're getting on this bandwagon. But the interesting thing that was recently pointed out was that instead of trying to integrate into society, they're basically trying to break down society to conform to them.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, we just want to be a part of, and we want to be, normal human beings and just live our lives as a normal human being like everybody else, they're making it this big gigantic thing. I'm gonna do all these facial piercings and paint my hair this color, and it's very attention seeking, but it feels like it is for the purpose of breaking down culture. It's not that we want to integrate, it's we want to break down your society, we want to break down your culture because we don't like you, or whatever they're, maybe in their mind. And I think there's a lot of animosity towards, for example, from the kind of extreme left end of it, there's a lot of animosity towards the right end of it, the extreme right end of it, especially because of the religious stuff. You hate me, we hate you, we're going to just sit here and butt heads. And so it's it's kind of a rebellious, burn down the world type thing in some contexts, and it really is damaging, like I said, for those people who are just trying to do the thing that is the best choice for them and just transition, be perceived the way they want to, and live their life the way they choose. Very damaging. Potentially.
I live in Holland, and in my country it was the first to accept gay marriage. Actually, I don't know any better. It's always been accepted here and normal, and my cousin is lesbian. I don't know any better than that. And it's we don't have that much the pressure that is, for example, in America, that you see it's so much talked about ad nauseum, but all for the wrong reasons. The things that really need to be talked about, you don't hear about that. No, it's all about the victimhood of equality, and we want this and we want that, and and then create the divisiveness. But nobody is actually talking about the consequences of what you go through when you actually choose to do that, and in light of the children as well. And Airika, you experienced that firsthand as a child as well, and maybe, thank God, you got sick, but and I think maybe that was a message for you also to not get sucked into that. But obviously at that time it wasn't even as bad as it is at this moment. So how do you look upon it now today?
Well, I'm 45 now, and so I've been through a lot of different stages in this process to get to where I am now. And one factor that definitely influences how I would perceive what's going on as far as agenda is I was a core team member of a lawsuit against Obama back in 2011 to 2014 for the National Defense Authorization Act. And so I was working in strategy, art direction strategy, because this was a blacklisted event. They didn't want people talking about this portion of the agenda because it very much leads to where we are today. But that's another conversation. But what I learned from that experience is how strategy on the upper echelon level is used to achieve goals. I also learned a lot about what this deep state or cabal, who they are, what they're about, which essentially, to summate that as simply as possible, it's just a core group of families that have been controlling the world through banking. I mean, it's pretty simple if you reduce it down to that. Mm. And so, and as we're, it's coming out more and more and more. I've worked with sex slaves. I lived in Hollywood. I worked for the L Word with Showtime, and was very high up in the lesbian community there when I lived there.
I like that show.
And I saw a lot of things, going to VIP parties and doing all of this stuff. I worked for Rose McGowan. There's so much more going on. The machinations behind the scenes are so much more debauched, and the hedonism when I was there was at its all-time high. But it's all breaking down now because the true face of what that actually is, and the evil that's involved with the pedophilia and all these different things. And so if you start to look at what's happening today through those types of viewpoints, you start to understand, okay, if you're you're psychopathic, you've been running the world for hundreds of years through banking and finance, and you've got a lot of perverted proclivities that you need to keep secret, and you run the entire world media, everything's monopolized through you. Why would the trans agenda be so useful to them? Because and think about all the world wars. Gay people are always, they're a minority, so you always use minorities to break a society apart, because it's so easy to demonize or to falsely raise up or give too much platform to a minority where the majority starts to get very upset. It's very easy to divide people up in these ways. And so when you're looking at the fact that they're poisoning us, they're dumbing us down, they're propagandizing us, they're manipulating our children in school with different sex education and things like this, where they're leading impressionable young developing minds into directions. I mean, I was very fortunate that my mom worked in psychiatry my whole life, and so she was a very open-minded person when it came to what I was doing. She just kind of let me be. She didn't make me feel bad about it. She let me evolve as I wanted to. But a lot of people don't have that. And like touching on the Christian topic is an interesting one as well, because this far right, which is usually like the conservative, religious, Christian side of things, they're kind of twisting this in another way, because they don't want to look at all of the subtext. They just want to say that there are two genders. That's just the way it is. There's a man and a woman, and that's what God said is the right way. And yes, it does alienate a lot of people because it gets rid of conversation, but so too does political correctness. I forget if it was George Carlin who said political correctness is just fascism with manners. Yeah. Essentially, it censors people to divide people up into pronouns and labels. It censors people. It makes it taboo to speak. You can get shut down so easily. And of course, cancel culture, all these things are intentionally divisive for breaking people apart, because they want us to be isolated, quarantining at home, socially distanced, afraid to talk to each other. So
what you mean with the they say, yeah, there's only two genders, which I agree with, but it's the way they say it. It's, it's like, even if you transition, no, you're still that, right? That what you were born. And I agree with that. That's not correct. As for
you brought up earlier about hermaphrodites.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We do have God is showing us that there are not perfect left and right in every condition. So
yeah, they would say then it's a disorder, but yeah, I don't agree with that completely either, because
but it's still nature.
Exactly.
You can call it whatever you want.
Well, I did see that documentary. It's not that they can function completely sometimes, because they are also misformed, right? Or deformed. How do you say that in English? So there are obviously things that didn't go well, but it doesn't mean, and so that's an exception to the rule, obviously. Mm-hmm. But interesting enough, in the 70s and 80s, there was talked about this topic. You don't hear about that at all anymore. Have you noticed?
What do you mean specifically?
The hermaphrodites.
Yes. Well,
it's completely, thrown off the map.
It's inconvenient to the conversation, and it's also inconvenient to the strategy that they're going for right now, which is dividing society on every micro level that they can, to make it impossible to connect to actually get intimate communication with other people. They don't want that. The masking, all of that stuff is all about dividing us up and getting rid of and eradicating intimate communication, intimate connection, or an actual acknowledgement and understanding. They don't want that, because that's a powerful thing that brings people together. And when you're trying to take over the world, lower the population, and bring in a new normal, that kind of derails that and doesn't make it work very well when people are connecting and understanding each other. But both sides have their right point of view, and both sides have things that could be worked on when it comes to evolving their point of view. And the emotional, the vibration is so intense and so extremist right now that it makes it impossible to actually have a real decent conversation on these topics. But you could get into, like Laina was talking about, two-spirit people, third, fourth, fifth genders, all of these things in indigenous cultures throughout history, and all different cultures in the world. Like Fiji, they have people who live as the opposite sex in order to uphold certain traditions and family roles. These things are all very much a part. But if you want to just look at the science side of things, we all start out as female in the womb, and a very delicate process of introduction of hormones through our development determines when and whether we turn into males or stay females. And that means, to me, if logically speaking, that all of us are a gradation. We're not really distinctively, one way or another when it comes to the internal mechanism, but especially on the spiritual side of things.
We shouldn't, because otherwise we're out of balance, aren't we? That's why we have the feminine and masculine, and, that needs to be in balance. So in a way, that totally makes sense. Also that in, also Mel said, like hermaphrodites were sacred in many tribal cultures.
Absolutely.
Well, it makes sense, because in a way they have the best of both worlds, right? And so they are kind of, I think they may have seen this as a balance kind of thing. Like, look, they are balanced, right?
And also to be able to see multiple perspectives in one person. Is a very valuable thing in order to be a healer and a teacher and a guide spiritually. I think that's how they would see it. But I think that there's definitely an agenda at play here. And I think that dividing people on things that can't be proven when it comes to like your sexual interests, or like I think both Laina and Beverly brought up abuse in childhood. I've known so many people who've been sex slaves, like people from very wealthy families, very powerful families, that have lived secret lives that are so horrible, and the abuse and the sex trafficking and all of those things are real, and those things are trying to be, they're trying to hide those things with these topics, because putting them in the foreground helps them bury it.
Distraction, right? That's what it's about. And also the whole like now on TikTok, right? There's all these people that are like the pronouns that they use. That's another distraction, because anybody that can see if, if somebody, I always just ask, like, are you a male or a female? If I'm not sure, and I'm just going to ask, but these people just demand from you that you just know. And it's all about distraction. It's not even about, they just demand these things. So they want to shame people that are, not participating. There's this woman on YouTube. She's also transgender. I love that woman because she calls out all these people, these woke people that are, still looking completely like a man and then claiming they're a woman all of a sudden because, I don't know, like that guy that said, oh, it's ma'am, right, in the shop. And I can't remember her name though, but she's really, really good. And I love
Blair
that.
White?
What?
Is it Blair White?
Yes, that's her. I love her. And I only encountered her by accident, and I listened, and I was like, it's hilarious. She calls everybody out. And it's good that there's people like that, because, she shows that there is, she actually is taking that power back. of being authentic and being yourself. And I love that. And I think many more should do that, right? Because it needs to be called out, like everything needs to be called out that's wrong in this world, and that's, suppressing people that, try to be themselves and try to they're actually struggling through it, and they don't get a platform. No, they're only overshadowed by these idiots, right?
Yeah.
So Laina, how did you experience your road in this, and how people reacted to you, and how they how they treated you?
Well, I have definitely had some hate from the right, and I kind of developed like a complex because of that. Like, I've learned to forgive and, you know what, ignore the hate. However, I can say that I used to follow like sort of like the Q people, and like so in 2020, I uploaded a video of myself to Twitter, just taking the oath.
Right.
And I must say, I got a lot of acceptance from that. I was surprised at how many people were willing to accept me.
Well, that's because as soon as they see that you're actually like, otherwise they just assume that you are in that wokeness side, right? So in that sense, and because you do not need to defend yourself, but in a way, because it's been so hijacked, you do need to stand up and just not so much choose a side or show which side you're on, but rather, share your truth. And that's what you're actually doing right now, which is great. And those people that are not willing to actually first get to know you and judge beforehand, I think it's a good thing that when you then come out, I do think that's when people start thinking, hang on, there's so much more to this. There is a world of people, that are actually transgenders, but they are on our side, right? And I think that's a good thing, because that actually balances out again the whole woke crowd, so to speak. So I think it's good that you both actually started, or all three of you have platforms that you speak out and just be yourself, and be able to show people it's not all wokeness, and there are serious issues to it, right? So what else did you encounter?
So I don't like to judge an entire faith by, it's, a subgroup of its adherents. But I also developed I just had like a complex of like, oh, okay, I need to stay away as far from Christianity and anything to do with Christians as possible. Because, well, but then again, I've developed relationships with like so many other Christians who are accepting of me. Yeah. And the faith aspect is complicated because, obviously people have a right to believe what they want, but it doesn't give them the right to force their ideology on others.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be the same as actually that whole transgender club on the woke side do the same. Exactly. They do exactly the same. So, both parties do the same thing, but they all blame each other, right? And actually Mountain is in here, and she says the way that Laina and I met was interesting, but she helped me take a long, hard look at myself. And I remember her telling that story, which was very interesting. So all of you, you actually make people think, which is is interesting because, it's obviously there are those that attack, but there are also people that once you get to know them, they start thinking about, wait a minute, even I had to, because I wasn't familiar with the whole transgender thing, although it is a lot easier here in Holland where it's much more accepted. It's always been around, actually. I always went to gay clubs and the transvestites. I mean, those are the best clubs. So, you go there, but it's not all over the world. It's not like that, but it doesn't mean that I knew a lot about it. And I learned a lot about it by knowing you guys. So, and that's a good thing. So I would only say, just keep speaking up and be there, be out in the world. Don't shy away, because I can only imagine how many people actually did shy away and lock themselves up in depression of what's going on. But, in a way, as we all need to fight for our freedoms, you guys have a different task on hand. But, all the same, it's a war, isn't it? So, Beverly, what about you? How I remember you talking on Nicole's show about your work and how you were perceived as a man when you were a man, and how that went. Can you talk a bit about that?
Just about how people interacted with me differently, or my experience with it, or
yeah, how you because you wanted to be in their world, but then you realized, hang on, I'm not like that at all.
Well, I really don't feel like I fit into either stereotypical kind of mold of male or female, because really, if I'm around a bunch of guys, then I feel like I have to balance them out and be more nurturing. And if I'm in a group of girls, I feel like I have to balance out and be more protective. So it depends on the environment that I'm in. And I feel like it is very much a subconscious need to balance the energies in that group. But it does become very apparent. And it was like I was saying on the podcast, if people start noticing what is different, what does not fit, people are kind of programmed of what doesn't fit here. And I think it's an old, probably survival instinct of, being able to detect, some type of danger, something that doesn't belong, or something that could be potentially harmful. But people just kind of notice what doesn't fit. And so I was, around a group of guys, for example, they would really hone in on whenever I wasn't acting 100% like a, kind of a macho guy. I worked around kind of a lot of macho types, very, beat their hands on their chest types. And there were a couple in there that were actually very, very balanced. But in observing, there was one particular coworker, and he would always kind of act like he agreed, when the other two were sitting there and kind of, tooting their own horns and, stuff like that. And I get it. The masculine dynamic is very kind of, competitive, aggressive, and, it keeps them in that kind of fighting fit state, space, so that they can protect. So I understand kind of the banter that they do. It's kind of a dance. But the one guy that was very much more in touch with his feminine side, like, he'd play along with it. But I always noticed, like, he would kind of hold back, and none of them knew that I was trans. Only the management level knew that I was trans. So my coworkers didn't. And he would kind of hang back with me sometimes and be like, I don't know about that. What do you think? And I'm like, yeah, I wasn't really feeling that, And so I could tell, like, he was much more balanced. And then the other two, they were just very, very much into the masculine. And there was some, I think, wounding in those two a bit, just in how egotistical they had to be. Like, they had to stay in their ego. They could never have any kind of amount of humility, it seemed like. But it was interesting, the dynamics. And then, but on the same time, at the same time, when I'm hanging out in a group of girls, I'm always more masculine than they are. And I always put myself in that position of protector. I'm like, I'm going to walk you to your car. No, I'm going to call me when you get home. It's always been that way. So it's kind of like my natural inclination is to balance the group that I'm in. And I kind of do that on a one-on-one level too. So to me, it's like, kind of my takeaway through all of it is realizing that as far as energy wise and how I project, it very much is, I guess, something that is innate to me that I have to balance. You know, if somebody is too heavily in this, I have to balance in the opposite direction and kind of, you know, get the scales in the right place. But if I'm talking to somebody who's very well balanced, I can just be 100% me. So it's a really weird kind of aspect. And it was very interesting seeing the inner workings, you know, from the perspective of somebody who's being seen and treated and everything as a man. And I mean, they did not even know. They knew I was a little weaker than them, but that was about it. But it was really interesting, the dynamics of it all. It was very enlightening to get kind of a behind the scenes look and then kind of pull back and say, you know what, I think I've always had the masculine and the feminine. I mean, I'm more comfortable in the masculine. That's more my default space, especially appearance wise. But as far as energy wise, I feel like I lean a little bit more towards the masculine, and kind of my outwards projection. Inwardly, I'm more feminine. There's a lot of different elements to it. And I think that people try to oversimplify it into just your appearance and how you want to project physically versus how you think mentally, how you feel emotionally. You know, there's a lot more elements to it. I feel like people try to really simplify it, and it's actually a little bit more complicated, and spiritually, obviously, as well.
I also noticed that like they want to demasculate men, and that doesn't mean a man can still stay a man, but be more empathic and sensitive, which is balanced. But to bring them completely to the other side is kind of it's so effed up. And the same with women, you know, oh, the whole equality thing. Yeah, fine. I'm all for equality, etc. But then again, you know, that was in the time when women really didn't get, you know, to vote and all that stuff. Now there's a whole different thing going on, which tends to go towards more masculinity for women. And they try to mix up everything to a way that people cannot be authentic anymore. They can, you know, you cannot be a male and or you have to be completely overboard to the other side. But instead, a male can still be sensitive and empathic, right? And just stay male. Like the woman can still stay feminine and soft and all the traits that women have without being, you know, that demanding in the way they are today. The whole feminism thing, I think that whole movement is so wrong on so many levels, because, you know, they try to hijack anything that comes on their path. So
well, and I think part of it too, I think part of it too is, if you think about the pendulum swing, if you start out over here on the right and then the left doesn't like that, you know, they don't like the masculine men and the feminine women, they don't like the typical nuclear family, they don't like the religion, so they swing as hard as they can over in this direction. And I think what we're getting to now is it's going to start easing into that center and being like, okay, that extreme wasn't right and this extreme wasn't right. We don't do the extremes. It's balance and harmony and figuring out where to, I mean, just really acceptance and you know, there's obviously, when we're talking about this, there's a huge aspect of trauma that needs to be healed when people feel like they have to just swing to this other extreme and get aggressive about their opinions or try to break down an entire culture because they don't like it. There's some trauma that needs to be dealt with there. So I think getting people into a healthier place where both sides can kind of come to this, you know, this more neutral center space and say, yeah, we like a nuclear family. That's how we're going to live our lives. Okay, cool. That's fantastic. It's a beautiful thing. Okay, well, we're a gay couple or a trans couple or, you know, whatever, and we're going to adopt some kids, and or maybe we're going to focus on our careers, and everybody just kind of getting to that point of like, okay, you're not harming anybody. You do you, you know, as long as you're being, you know, good to your environment, good to your community and all that, it shouldn't really make a difference. But it's when these extremes get involved and they start bickering and arguing with each other, and my way's right, no, my way's right. And it's like, it's that constant fuss, you know. And it's like, I feel like the people that are starting to find that balance are kind of like the mediators at this point of like, okay, no, you're wrong on this, but you're right on this, and you're wrong on this, but you're right on this. Let's play nice, children. You know.
Well, I think that you have touched on so many essential topics that I just want to like talk to you for so long right now. I'm like, oh my God, I want to talk to you after this. But a couple of the things that you said that I really think are profound into the things I like to think about on this topic are how you were talking about how you tend to want to balance the situations that you're in. And I think that's pretty profound to say, especially if you look through a spiritual lens, because if you look at what the agenda is about today, it is about monoculturization. It is about making everything the sameness. And there's only one truth, and there's only, I've got to, fact check you because what you've said actually makes me very uncomfortable and you've triggered me.
Yeah.
But like the monoculturization is it's an essential goal in order to do the fourth industrialization, which is to merge humans with machines. To dehumanize us means that we have to be all made into the Borg, the collective one world perception on truth. And so that's why, that as you were saying so rightly about the extremes of each side, and what we need to get is back to balance. And that balance is true diversity. That is a true polyculture. It's an embracing of the myriad differences that we should have, and is actually very healthy to have. It's like if you look at a gardener or a food forest, the more diverse it is, the more healthy and balanced that it is. These are the types of conversations that I find so fascinating. It's like the black, white, the Hegelian dialectic. It's the team spirit is the Republican or liberal, and they've destroyed the very meaning of what liberalism even means, progressivism even means, conservatism even means, in favor of this neoliberal, neoconservative, which is just a new form of totalitarian control. And it requires that everyone be the same, which is why they're erasing and eradicating anybody who speaks like we're speaking in this conversation. I can't even tell you how many times I've been censored for trying to talk about this stuff. But like,
just keep the keywords low because I want to keep my channel.
I think Beverly, like what you're saying is so important because to get through this and to ultimately win and have that great awakening that everybody does talk about, it's going to require a calming down of these extremes and the emotional volatility that has been incited through all of this, and the fear porn that we're like drowning in right now on all levels. And it has prevented that radical intimate communication that we so badly need in order to actually ascend and connect, which is where our humanity lies, which is what they're so afraid of. These people that are in control of these narratives are, they're psychopaths. They don't have that emotional connection to their perception on this world. And therefore, those of us who are very soulful and very connected to source are horrifying to them, really, because they can't understand us. We're like some type of an anomaly or an enigma to them in general. And they have to cancel us out because we're the biggest threat, because we wake people up through our example and through talking about these things and turning the light on for people so they can come out of the dark. Because essentially, the more that we talk about it, the more light we bring to the topic, the less these vampires can survive.
Well, I'm just thinking that if the media would have been taken out of the equation of everything, like, and you have a robot that just states the fact every day, everywhere, right? Just like, that would be where AI would come in handy, because it just states whatever is, right? We would have nothing of these problems, not any, because it would all balance out within society itself, because you are not indoctrinated and constantly bombarded with the propaganda, because obviously it's the media that gives platforms to those, that are telling us that left is right and up is down, because that's exactly what is happening. It's chaos. And if you look over time now, we were like, the pendulum was swinging like that, just going about its business. And now we got, in the past 5 years, it went like that, right? And I feel that now that start to slow down. We're definitely not yet here, but we are at the slowing down of it. And I can feel that. And, you see that things are starting to calm down from the extreme point. It's people screaming still, but nobody's taking it serious anymore, or people are not investing energy in it anymore that much. Well, first,
because it's exhausting.
It is, right? I'm freaking tired of getting triggered. I'm so tired of getting triggered that I won't get triggered anymore, because I'm like, oh God, no, I can do this today, like that. And on all levels, right? And so eventually something's got to give, right? And it can only go on for so long, and then it stops. So and I guess that's what they also mean with nothing can stop what is coming. Because think about it, it can't always stay the same way it is. Are you guys tired of being triggered?
Well,
Absolutely.
I think too, on the trigger thing, here's I feel like it's kind of a collective lesson, 2020, 2021. We had to get all triggered to get to the point that, like you said, we're tired of being triggered. But what that does is that creates that time of coming back to ourselves and saying, my energy is worth my focus. I don't have to give my energy to these things. I deserve to keep my energy. And no wonder my cup has always felt empty, because I keep just constantly pouring into other people's cups. And or I look at it as, I did a post on my channel not too long ago about how everybody says, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And so I just literally thought about like a chicken constantly laying eggs and going over and putting them in this basket. And like, okay, I'm going to attach to this idea, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time, and I'm going to give you a little bit of energy, and I'm going to listen to your drama. And it occurred to me, like, that is lack mentality. You don't have lack. You have this projected thing that you're doing constantly that you don't actually have to do. And so I made this point of, like, instead of constantly, us suffering to sit here and work on laying more eggs just to give more eggs away, just bring them all back and hatch them.
Yeah.
Abundance right there.
I saw today a video from somebody, and she said something so profound. At first, I didn't understand what she was saying. She said, there's only two choices: choose life or choose freedom. And then I thought, well, can you choose both? But then she said, because if you choose life, automatically you're not choosing death. Therefore, your fear of death. And with fear comes choices to be made, survival, all that stuff. And I thought, whoa, that's brilliant. That's so profound. So if you choose freedom, you choose sovereignty, you choose your own authentic self, and you choose to just be you. And, there is no fear, nor of life or death. And so there are no choice to be made. And I kind of start to arrive in that point that I'm like, oh yeah, because obviously you say, oh, I choose freedom, right? We all scream that. But if you think about this, there's a complete difference between choosing life and choosing freedom. Because freedom is, being with yourself, be happy, and not needing to put all these eggs in every basket, because, whatever comes, that comes. Being in the now moment, that's what it's about. And I'm going to link that video actually below in description, because wow, that blew me away what she said, this woman. It was so profound. And it really helped me putting things in perspective as well. And I thought, well, and she said, you need to practice every day to choose freedom. And I thought that's incredible, because it covers literally everything all at once. And so I'm definitely going to put that in the description after we've done the show, because it's so timely and so relevant to what we're talking about right now as well. So sorry, you were not even finished. That popped in my head, Beverly. So Laina,
go
on.
No, go ahead. I was pretty much done. I had, when you said the trigger thing, it just occurred to me that there was a good time to mention, we just don't have to keep giving our energy away to things. We are better serving the world, because really, okay, here's another one. I've been saying this for years, and I never really had a good understanding of what it really I was meaning. But I had this sense of the problems that we see in the world, all of them could be cured on a heart level. Pick your favorite, talking head to hate or whatever, and say, if their heart was right, if they had dealt with their trauma, if they got themselves right, you could apply that to anybody in the entire world. If everybody was doing their own inner work, doing their own healing, dealing with their own triggers, dealing with their own egotistical sides, their own wounded, inner child and things like that. If everybody's heart was right, we would have no problems in the world.
Yeah.
Literally. And it comes down to, everybody is so worried about the external stuff, and, look over here and look at this flashy thing here, and let's get riled up about this. And if we all just took time, and I think this is part of why a lot of people started waking up in 2020, was all of a sudden we had this time to sit with ourselves. If we really take the time to sit with ourselves and work on our own self and improve our own self and become the healthiest person we can possibly be, mentally, physically, spiritually, in all aspects, just standing in our own divinity, our own sovereignty. And then if every person is doing that, the problems in the world melt away completely and totally. The systems that have, kept us under thumb, the world, starvation and, third world countries, it would cease to be a problem. We'd all just be like, hey, we need to go down there and we need to build some farms, and let's take them some tractors and build some wells. Like, it wouldn't be a problem, because everybody would be in their authentic self, doing the things that they are passionate about, and showing that example to the rest of the world of, hey, you don't have to continue to do this. There is a better way.
Yeah.
So,
it's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the last 10 years, how much more we've gotten into the hyper narcissism and the I'm the center of everybody's universe, and superficiality, anti-intellectualism, and always being in our phones and in our devices and inside.
That's where it came from, right? It's the the selfies and all that. I mean, it's rampant. It's amazing that we're obviously from different generations, but where there were no phones. Exactly. I mean, and when you look at it, I'm like, I feel even still awkward to even sit here and talk on YouTube. Like, it feels so unnatural, because, it's like, why would people want to talk? Well, other people are like, oh, everybody want to listen to me. And, it's something that is, it's something that I really have difficulty getting used to. But for this new generation, it's so freaking normal.
Yeah. But it's also so abnormal to actually really explore topics, like having a deep conversation instead of just doing a selfie where you're doing duck lips, But this is why this is so different from the typical, like, hi, hello, I'm sexy. I just, coming from the 70s and being around where, we were in nature and we played outside all day, and we had like 4 channels on the TV, and there were no computers, and we barely used the phone, nonetheless, like, have it on us at all times of the day, tracking and tracing us. It's like, it's just a totally, if you think about the young people today, they're so used to, I mean, they've been it's been normalized that they're surveilled all day long. We actually had privacy when we were kids, and in the nature deprivation, like, I can't even believe how many young people don't have any real contact with being in the woods or being out of a city or ever having left a city. These are all like subtexts that go into this dysmorphia in general, because we're natural beings with a full spectrum and diverse backgrounds and cultures and indigenous roots. All of us have indigenous roots, no matter where we're from. We've been forcibly removed from those indigenous ways of looking at the world and those perspectives that are in balance, as Beverly so rightly said, with nature. and spiritual centeredness in that natural balance. It's just crazy that, it's to provide a platform like you're doing here, to have a conversation that's truly in depth, is like a radical act in itself right now, because so few people are actually doing it, and so many people are caught up in whether their makeup is just right and their lighting is just right, and not actually what they're saying and the content of what they're saying, and sweep judgments that we make on groups of people and classifications of people and demographics of people and statistics and this and that, instead of actually looking at the individual character. And when it comes to transgenderism, these types of things are such a personal path. It's such a personal experience that they're trying to make impersonal. They're putting all of this very personal stuff into the limelight and bastardizing it and perverting it, really.
And wanting to make it a cookie cutter thing, right? Like all transgenders are like this, and this, right? And that's indeed exactly what. But it happens on all levels, obviously, in society. But it's so, actually, the more you talk about it, the more you see how fucked up it is, right? Right? I mean, think about it. And this is why dialogue is so good, right? Because when you have dialogue, you just discover, hang on, things are, all of a sudden you turn a perspective and you're like, holy, I knew it was crap, but it's even worse than I thought, right? But and at the same time, it's also good to stand still by that and think to yourself, okay, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to, look in the world? And I think, like, when you get the 100 monkey effect, eventually everybody will do the same. It's, nothing can stop what is coming, is it?
I think it's going to start happening a lot faster from here, too. I just get the sense that we were hitting that super saturation point where it's just going to be like, boom.
Yes. Yeah, I love that, because I think this whole experience is actually a good thing, because, that's how we evolve and that's how we grow as a species, or as a whatever we want to call it. But, this chaos is necessary. However, people suffer through it. But then again, on the other hand, you get out on the other side if you survive it, if you fight for it, if you go within. I mean, if I look at Laina, when I met her, she was crying all day. Now, I don't know if that is all hormones and all stuff, but I know you were so sensitive. You were so afraid to speak up. And, and look at you now. We're not even 1 year further, that. I mean, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I've had a lot of sort of subconscious complexes to deal with, anxieties, fears, you name it. Throughout all of this, I found, especially because I've dealt with this insane unorthodox complex that has accompanied me throughout my life. And I was writing the other day on this, the more you know yourself, the more you trust yourself, the more you can go within, find what you're all about, the less unworthy you will feel. And the more you will be able to trust yourself, trust the universe, and just, yeah, you got it.
Well, and Brooke says is in the chat, like, community is important. And I do believe that, because, you have grown so much in the past year, and, we all did. I did too. And, but I couldn't do that without all of you. Right. And I think it's so important to also encourage each other, because I remember we were in a chat group and you're like, I'm out of here because I don't belong here. And I'm like, yes, you do. And, and there were a few times you ran out and then you came back again, and you were struggling so much, but, you came out on the other side. And I think that's so awesome to see, because you radiate now and you are having a voice and you give yourself that voice, which is so important and what I was rooting for. And here we are. And, it's so beautiful to see. And Beverly, you had this struggle. I wanted to talk about that because, for those that don't know, the fact that you still have your voice, which is a bit lower, and things that are as a consequence of your medication that you had. Can you touch a bit upon that?
Yeah, so my voice is lower than it used to be, which honestly I'm happy about, because my voice used to be like one of those squeaky little mice voices from Cinderella or something, like at least I thought it was. When I heard it recorded before, I was like, oh gosh, no. So it's I kind of like where it's at right now. It's higher than it was when I was actively taking testosterone, but like I've got a bit of an Adam's apple now that I didn't used to have before. But also I was a little heavier, so
I didn't know you get that too from the medication.
Huh?
I didn't know you grow an Adam's apple. I didn't know that.
I'll have to find some pictures from when I was actively taking it and send them to you. So it's really, honestly, it's pretty much just the voice, which to me is a complete non-issue, because I think people still, the funny thing is people still don't quite understand my gender at this point. I still dress masculine, and I look masculine enough that people still pretty much assume I'm a man. So I just, honestly, I don't even care anymore. I just roll with it. I'm just like, okay, I'm not even going to correct them. I don't care. Whatever.
I find
they ask me my name, and
I find it always badass. It's like Alara that's always complaining. It said, oh yeah, but I'm always that something in the middle, well, she's very much feminine, but still, people are always like, oh, putting you in that box. And I'm like, I think it's really cool because, you're unique, you're different than anybody else. So yeah, I think that is,
I think it's most appealing when anybody is just secure in who they are and comfortable in themselves. Like they're just comfortable with whatever it is.
Yes.
Like what you just said is I don't want it to be like passed over, because what you said is actually, to me, very profound, is that you're no longer reactive to what people call you or how people react to you, because people are learning. People are trying to understand what's going on. And if every time they try to ask a question and you're a person that reacts so extraordinary, it shuts them down from that learning process and actually coming to a point of acknowledgement and understanding. And so if the trans community or the gay community or any community wants to be fully understood by the greater community, they need to be open and not reactive to all of these predetermined labels and points, because it's really just about controlling someone's ability to learn and understand. And I just wanted to say that that was one of the things from your interview the other day that really stood out to me too, is that you're one of those people that can allow for people to come to you and ask questions and be confused and make mistakes, because the learning process is filled with making mistakes. And so it's just, it becomes very stressful and so anxiety inducing to have these curiosities, but feel like you have no way of actually asking or engaging because you might get shut down or canceled or attacked or lose your job or whatever it is. I think that's one of the most profound and difficult things about what's going on with this whole agenda, is the inability to actually connect and understand and reach that form of acknowledgement that would enlighten people. And that's why I'm really grateful that you created this conversation, because I'm learning a lot from just listening to you guys speak too. It's just a very important conversation. So thank you for so many of these awesome points that you've brought into the conversation, Beverly. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I always love the way that you speak and the things that you touch upon, because they are always very profound. And I love that about you. Yeah, so go on.
The big thing with that, just to Airika's comment, is it got to a point of understanding I am not my body, I am not my brain. And so my body can be whatever, I could be pink and purple polka dotted. It wouldn't make any difference. That's not who I as a soul am.
Yep.
And so, another big one with specifically like coming off the testosterone and trying to figure out, am I going to be okay with this? Like, how's the gender dysphoria going to act? It came to this point of, I am not the sum of my parts. Just plain and simple. You could rearrange me, put me back together in a different order, whatever. That's not me.
Yeah, because Airika touched upon that just briefly and always said that, there's nothing more attractive than confidence. I don't mean cocky or, all that. No, confidence. That there is nothing more attractive than that.
Yeah, knowing who you are is so important.
Yeah, because people won't be able to see anymore your physical features and all that. No, they will see your confidence, because that's what radiates, right? And that's that's something.
And even
that
being okay with not knowing is a form of confidence. Like, being okay with the fact that you're on an evolutionary path and that you don't always know is fine too. I don't know. You've just touched on so many points in this conversation that I'm really happy about. That's definitely one of them.
Yeah. So go on about what came with that and how you. Well, you just said it, but you were still.
I mean, there's still things that I still have facial hair. Some days I don't shave it because I like it. I mean, in all honesty, I enjoy it. I sit there and scratch on my chin. Laina can tell you this. I mean, I'll sit there and play with it. And like, it's almost like a little comforting thing at this point to just like play with my chin hair. Obviously body hair doesn't go away unless you make it go away. And so it's like, but I'm okay with it. I enjoyed not shaving my legs when I was trans. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to go back to shaving my legs. I don't know, like, there's a lot of judgment around it, but like, do I care? Especially if I have an androgynous enough look that people aren't really questioning it, that they're just going to assume that if I'm in shorts and have hairy legs and whether my face is shaved or not, that they're just going to assume that I'm a man, and I'm just going to be like, okay, you can think that, like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah. I love that.
I don't care. Like it's getting back to just, and honestly, I've enjoyed physically being in my body so much. And I won't say that it was because of the testosterone or it was because of getting off of the testosterone. It was getting to that point of wanting to be aware of my life. When I stopped taking testosterone, that was really about the pharmaceutical aspect of it and about, sticking a wrench in the spoke of this self-sabotaging wheel, of always thinking that the solutions to my life were outside of me. That it was that of, I need to stop this and I need to work on me. Yep. Does it mean that I'm never going to in the future transition? I don't know. I mean, it's something that I still question because I still have some gender dysphoric feelings, but I realize now I have to work through and figure out where those came from and if they actually came from the medical condition of having gender dysphoria or if it came from all those additional factors that made me, psychologically think that I had to be a certain way in the world. So it's really working back through that. But one of the things that I've tried to do in my life is never, well, I shouldn't say through my whole life. It was something that I learned the hard way, is never limit myself to what could happen in the future as far as what I could grow to understand or evolve into. Because if you had told me when I was, 16 years old and, very, embedded into the very right wing, like Baptist Christianity, if you told me that I was going to transition, I might have shot myself thinking that that was the holy thing to do, of like, I'm going to rid the world of an evil, like I never would have believed it. And so I try not to limit myself into saying that I think that this is permanently the solution for me. I really don't know. And to what Airika said on that, like, it's an ego thing when people have to know. Yeah. And setting the ego aside, I don't have to know. I'm working on me, and it's going to take time to figure that out.
That's actually in the chat says esoteric solitaire. He or she, I don't know, it says meeting a stranger and not knowing their sex, gender, or sexual orientation equals less pressure to me. So it works both ways, isn't it? Even for the one, perceiving you. And it's true, because the whole topic, right, whether it's about racism, about the LGBTQ, whatever it is, and or transgenders, it's always because the topics are always brought up proactive. That's when the friction starts, right? That people are almost too scared how to react because, oh my God, somebody can get offended. Well, if you just meet somebody and you do not know, or it's not even an issue, the problem never comes up. And if it does, it's never an awkward moment. It's kind of sincere. It's like, oh, sorry, are you a man or a woman, right? It's like with babies. You don't know what they are, but yet it's awkward when you say to the mom, oh, is it, what a nice baby, because, otherwise you have to say it's a boy or a girl. And I'm not like that. I'm like, what is it, a boy or a girl? Because, well, what, but, I'm sure I'm not the only one not knowing, because it's a baby. Nobody can see what it is, right? Unless you see them, while they have change of diapers, whatever. But it's always this tiptoeing around all these strange things, right? Like you were just talking about your Adam's apple. I didn't even know that, but I find that very interesting, right? And yeah, it's good to know these things. And it's also nice that people can just ask, because why would we be feeling strange about it?
Well, it's like that interview that you did with Angela. I loved that interview. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, go back and watch it. The one that you did with Angela over on her channel.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to post it on my channel this week. Yeah.
Yes. People should go back and watch that one, because some of the things that you were talking about like, social correctness and stuff.
Yeah.
It's where it comes in of like, if you just ask the question, like I have no problem. And I never did, even, when I was transitioning and didn't really necessarily want people to know, my focus was to become a man. And so it was counterproductive to tell people I'm a trans man. But when people did find out, if they had questions, like I always told them, like, I know it's a weird thing, but if you have questions, I will answer them. I mean, if you ask me something incredibly private, yeah,
I think it's kind of nice when people actually ask questions. It means they're interested. Otherwise they will attack you. They're not interested. Those that are attacking you, they're interested in pushing their opinion on you. But if somebody has a question, no matter how strange it is, right? They're interested. That's the whole reason. And that's always how I do see that logic as well. If people would ask me questions that most people are political correct, or they're embarrassed to ask, or, oh, that's awkward, you cannot do that. I find that so weird. Why can't we just be real?
Yeah. And honestly,
yeah.
Honestly, it was more awkward when people would just make assumptions. And I get it, because before I started transitioning, I still looked very masculine. It was really only my voice that gave me away. But, people would approach me and be like, hey, excuse me, sir, and then I always dreaded the moment of opening my mouth to speak to them, because I knew as soon as they realized, they were going to fall all over themselves apologizing. And it's like, dude, it's okay. Like, calm down. It happens. You saw me from the back. I have a short haircut. I'm wearing like a work uniform. Like, you can't tell. But the tripping over themselves apologizing made it even more awkward. But one of the things I find interesting, that when I was first starting the transition and still wasn't really passing fully as male and coming out of it a little bit, it is interesting because men typically perceive me as a man and will treat me as a man until I tell them otherwise or something. Women will typically perceive me as a woman, or if they do perceive me as a man, they will quickly realize that they were wrong and then usually ask about it or start, they'll cue in. And it's interesting. I think it has everything to do with men not scanning other men's bodies, but women are allowed to do that with men or women.
Yeah.
It's
just so interesting. It's actually kind of cool, because that means that you go in that world and you just belong there, and then you go, well, not that there has to be separate, but you go in a group of women
anywhere.
and you're just being that's what I love about the something in between, because you get to be both, right? And you get to be accepted in both as well. And I love that. Thank you for your super chat, UFO Mark, and also Sudabak. Thank you so much. So how about you, Airika? How are you living your life now? Do you you're lesbian, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So then do you still feel that you're masculine, or is it that you just embrace, listen, I'm a woman, but I just like women? Or does it entail a bit more than that, even though you had to choose obviously not to transition, which you wanted initially? So I'm trying to understand.
Well, first of all, when I got sick, I was at art school, and so I was going through a profound disruption of all of the different goals that I had had previously anyway, and on all levels. And I was in art school on a scholarship that required I keep a very high GPA, and I lost my hands right in the beginning because the inflammation and the rheumatoid arthritis overtook pretty much every part of my body. I had a very severe, very rapid onset version of it. And so I lost everything that I was building in general at that time very quickly, and put into a situation where I was in hospitals and fighting for my life, like every single day of the week, all day, like a full-time job. And being put on cereal bowls of medications, which totally changes your perspective on the medical world in general, when you're all of a sudden this young person and you're literally eating a cereal bowl of pharmaceuticals every day, and that's how you're told to live. It's started to make me question everything about this medical paradigm, but the paradigm in general at that point, because the medications just made me have all kinds of illnesses that were in different areas. I was having all different types of problems at this point, and not just this problem I started out with. And all of those medications like prednisones and different things to suppress your immune system and all these types of things started to affect my hormones in general, and started to make me aware of how important hormones actually, like the part that they play in our perception of reality and situations. My reactivity, I got roid rage and all kinds of mood swings and all kinds of issues that come along with those types of medications. And that was a learning process that was very shocking and difficult, but also living in chronic serious pain where you're having to get hip replacements and knee replacements. I've had total knee replacement. I'm a bionic woman at this point. I've had 10 to 15 surgeries on my hands to just be able to hold a pencil again. Nonetheless, start to paint again, because I used to draw photorealistically when I was first going to college. And so it was a complete destruction of all of these factors of what I thought were my identity in a general like capacity, not just gender. But it also just it all happened, I had my first sexual experience, and then all of a sudden my body was completely out of control within like, I don't know, less than a year after my first sexual experience. And so like trying to learn all of those things when you're in chronic severe pain and like you're disabled is a totally different factor. And so I think that those 15 years of extreme disability, having to go deal with the disability system. I even married a man in order to get health insurance at one point. And that was a huge crisis of my ideas of marriage and roles and the truth and all of these different things that I had to do in order to survive. Those things reduce you down to a place where you look at the world in a very different way than a typical 18 to 30-year-old would be doing it, and trying to look at their career path and look at how they fit into relationships in general when you don't have your body. And so that extreme crisis and spiritual path of realizing that I'm far more than my exterior was a very profound process that I'm still in today. I mean, I don't think as long as we're alive, I think that's going to be a process for all of us as we evolve and change towards getting older and leaving this body and all these things. But I became very aware of just how we're so much more than the meat puppet that is our identity.
Yeah.
And I just started to accept what I was comfortable with. And because I had such extreme anxiety, I had perfectionism disorder. I was a mess. And then being on all those cocktails of medicines messed my hormones up. I had no testosterone. I had to go on testosterone replacement just for my health at a certain point because all the drugs destroyed my hormones. And then I realized that the whole world with Monsanto and all these different, atrazine and these different fertilizers and chemicals and plastics, and the fact that there's a eugenics agenda going on and all these things that these so many the multiplicity of levels became something that became much more of my focus than what my body was appearing to look like. Of course, there's also whether men get respected in certain and because I valued my intelligence and my intellect and I wanted to be perceived as more than a pretty woman. Also, there's so many things that go into how you want to be perceived by the outside world, but also how you perceive yourself in the process that go into it. But I would say, I think it's normal for anyone to have both the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And this world has made it an objective to destroy the natural truisms of those spiritual, greater universal roles. And I've become more fascinated with that analysis and exploration than I am. I don't even really think it's hard for me to even imagine how much it was so painful to want to be a man and to not even be able to appreciate how beautiful of a female that I was as a natural, I was born into this natural, beautiful, healthy, athletic body. And I couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't even acknowledge it. I couldn't be in my body and being grateful for it.
Would you today, with everything that but you had no health problems whatsoever, and you could do a transition if you want, would you do it?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because
so you dodged the bullet in a way.
Understanding medications, not just universally, not just the cocktails that are put on to transition people with these are man-made, these are superficial chemicals that they're putting into your body in order to create these results. But understanding it from just the trying to survive and trying to fight back the inflammation process that I was in, and how much they change your mental perspective. Pharmaceuticals change so much. I started to realize that a clean life and seeking out that balance with nature and actually intimately understanding nature and how wildly out of balance that we are by design. In order to control people. Keeping people in a dysphoric state is a very good way to keep them controlled, because when somebody isn't calm in their own body and feeling good about themselves, they're very impressionable and easy to control.
Well, yeah, and that counts actually for a lot of medication. I was for 3 years on antidepressants. I ended that last year, which was
that difficult?
God, that was my eighth attempt, and I managed without killing myself this time, or trying to. But no, I had to figure out how to do it. I went completely holistic. I did detoxes and all that, and then I found out certain supplements that would balance out certain things. It was a real puzzle. It took me a long, long time. Actually 10 years to be exact, actually over 10 years. But I managed. And this past summer, I cut it all. And I'm so happy that I'm off them. Every day I think about that. Oh my God, I have no pill to take anymore. And obviously it takes adjustment to my body and everything, but I'm so glad I'm not depending on that crap anymore. And it's literally and that's just one antidepressants. In America, I know people are having 3 types of them, and these doctors just give stuff, and it's and it's not even for transitioning or serious disease. No, it's maybe because, oh, you're stressed out, here you go with your antidepressant, and which then spirals you down in even worse situation.
Yes.
Which then they give you other stuff to counter the side effects of that. It's an insane world, and I decided enough, and yeah, I was busy for 10 years quitting it, and it was not easy. You literally go nuts, because if after so many years you don't get any serotonin, your brain is not making it by itself. So now you need to find a way how you can balance that out, and slowly. So they have a university here, which then cost me money, where they actually dose it so specifically for each and every type of antidepressants that you have to go there, and then you have to pay for it in order to get off your own medication. I mean, it's insane. It's insanity. And I believe everybody I have no faith whatsoever in the medical industry at all. I'm completely, No.
Well, they've made trillions of dollars off of dis-ease. Trillions.
Yes. Yeah. They make people sick with the foods and everything that's going on, only to then, we know the circle, how it goes, right? But, these, and I think that the whole pushing on of that agenda, the transgender and all that with kids, I think it might be actually for that market as well.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how much money is in there and what type of medicine it is, but I think we can be sure it's a lot of money.
Make it difficult for people to figure out what you're saying right now. It by putting people like what you said is really important, because people don't realize that these psychotropic drugs, these antidepressants, anti-anxieties, they literally create a dependency in your physical body that if you do try to get off of them, you can literally go schizophrenic and have audio hallucinations, and that's caused from the withdrawal from the medicine. Yeah. And people don't even realize that. They're like, oh my God, I'm crazier than I thought. I need more help. I need no more drugs. And then it just creates this downward spiral.
Yeah.
But I think that you're absolutely correct that creating this issue with transgenderism is hiding the fact that they're chemically mutating people, sterilizing us, putting us into this dysmorphic state. But it also creates such a cognitive chaos, which they love, in order to not be able to even communicate or discuss this or even get to the bottom of what's happening as we're going through the process of dealing with all of these external factors.
Yeah, because that is never talked about. I never, ever heard anything about that until I actually met Beverly and started talking about it. And I was like, wait, what? Wait, I did never even think about that perspective of it, right? All the medication and all these treatments, and oh my gosh, I thought, operation and stuff, but obviously it's not that simple. But you don't think about that if you are. So then I start thinking about, wait a minute, so all these kids that they are trying to, push this agenda on, and there are many, it's insane. And,
in 1994 is when Prozac came out. And now it's like they're giving these types of psychotropic drugs to 2-year-olds.
Yeah,
it's becoming normalized to
like
have
with
children on
ADHD.
drugs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I was on the antidepressants. Then I had Xanax because I had massive panic attacks, and then I was diagnosed with ADHD, and so they gave me Ritalin. And I was like, hang on. So I have a downer and an upper. And that's when I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to rehab. And I went off the Xanax and all that. But I mean, it's insane. They don't even blink when they give that stuff, right? They know they're giving me uppers and downers at the same time. I'm
amazed that you got off of it. I'm absolutely impressed that you were able to do it, because I know so many friends who have tried and they've not succeeded yet.
With what?
with trying to get off of Xanax and Adderall and all
Oof.
these different cocktails. It's like really hard. Like one of my friends literally did go schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Trying to
Oh,
get off
well,
of it.
I killed myself twice almost with it. I had no control over myself. I had these thoughts that I needed to, like this urge to stab myself,
Yes,
stuff like that.
exactly.
It's so scary. It's your brain is not yours anymore. And so I got back on them again, and I tried again and again and 8 times, and I got out of it. But it was not easy. No, it definitely was not easy. But
Yeah.
I'm glad I pushed through. And I have to say, the detox I did, that helped a lot, because I didn't get off the Xanax in rehab. I got off it later. But that was because I started going completely holistic. I did detox, and all of a sudden I started to become more clear, because when I did the detox, my hormone levels and everything started balancing out. In fact, I had to actually taper off the antidepressants as well, because it didn't match with my body anymore. It started, I started reacting in a different way to it. And I was like, oh, I can't have that. So, I think everybody should do detox to begin with when they want to get rid of medication, like a heavy duty detox. And
I did the detox for sure. I mean, I was addicted physically to prednisone. It took me almost 3 years to get off a little crumb like this.
Yeah.
But then I also went a step further and stung myself 2,500 times with live honeybees, which really rebooted my system.
Yeah.
But there's so many answers out there for so many of these issues that we've touched on here, that like the fact that you were able to succeed is like a major testament that a lot more people would benefit from hearing about that.
Because I made some videos about it, and but it's literally, it's like a puzzle. You need to figure it, and I figured it out myself, because my own doctor said, I don't even know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. Just stay on them. I'm like, no,
you're on the cutting edge. This is what we're gonna have to do now. This is the next step.
Well, and I think in a way it also pushed me to, get radical and do it myself and go holistic and all that and figure it out with a lot of risks. But once you figure it out, there are more people figuring it out, right? And slowly we get rid of that system too. So anyway,
wow, really cool.
We've been on it for almost, oh my God, I didn't even plug in my laptop. Oh, it's good I see that now. Otherwise it was gone. So anyway, I want to thank you all so much for being here. And we definitely need to do this again, because there's so many topics that can be talked about that are very important and to cover. And I definitely want to encourage you to just stay on platforms, to keep talking, just go with it and stand in your powers, because really that's what it's all about. That's what makes change, isn't it? So okay, start the plugging. Beverly, where can people find you? I put everything in the description anyway from all of you, but still.
So my main stomping grounds is over on Telegram still. I think it's t.me/live_wisely to get to the page. That's going to be mostly where I'll repost, my whatever random thoughts I have for the time, and any videos and, interviews and stuff. I also do have my YouTube channel. I've only got one video up so far. I kind of had a lot of healing stuff to work through in those first few days right after the podcast, of just a lot of things that I didn't realize had been holding me back, and just speaking them, into the public, and getting some feedback from people was very overwhelming. So I'm going to be doing some more videos here in the near future. And then I do have an email that anybody can email me if they have any questions, or just need somebody to talk to about, a trans person in their life, or maybe they have questions thinking about transitioning, anything like that, or even just want to pop in and show some support. Actually, right before we went live, somebody emailed me right out of the blue and had just seen Nicole's podcast and just felt like she just needed to say thank you. And I was like, oh my goodness, perfect timing. I was getting anxious, you know? And so yeah, anybody can feel free to email me. I think that's about it. I don't have anything else booked for coming up in the near future. I think that's it for now.
Yeah. Keep actually making videos about your journey. I think that many people would be interested in seeing it, because I mean, everybody has somebody in their vicinity that is dealing with this stuff, right? So I think it's good. It's good. Have this real conversation about it, you know? So what about you, Airika?
Well, unfortunately, I've been deplatformed from a lot of my pages because I'm a naughty person and I don't know how to censor my mouth and my posts. But you can find me on Art with Aim Telegram. That's still pretty active. Artwithaim.com. My personal fine art page is AIRTISTE, artiste.com. You can still find me on Instagram under Art with Aim. And all of my contact is under artwithaim.com. If you go there, you can find all of that under the contact. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for having me on this platform. It's been such a pleasure to meet you, and to meet you too, Beverly. I've been hearing so much about you. So this is a very enlightening conversation for me as well.
Well, I'm happy that you were here, because, you know, it's so fun that all three of you have complete different stories, but they're all in the same subject. So I think actually, thank you, Laina, for bringing her. And I will put your Telegram in the description as well, which I forgot. I only put your website. So
thank you.
How about you, Laina?
Okay, yeah. I am mainly on Telegram these days. It's t.me/Laina_Oriana.
God, you guys, it really couldn't be any more difficult. People cannot, you know. Okay, go on. Make it more easy. /_
Okay, I do have English too. I believe that's in the description. So if people have like personal or professional inquiries, they can contact me on email or on Telegram. I have a YouTube channel and also a BitChute channel, which I'm not very active on, but
yeah, I've got those all in the description, so people can click on there and they find you. So thank you all so much. It was really enlightening for me as well, and hopefully for the audience as well, and the few bots that I see, which I'm constantly removing. But I guess the topic is a bit hot for them, you know, because the AI bots are all over the place, but that's fine. It's a badge of honor. So thank you all so much. And, you know, I'm going to be back on Monday. I don't know yet about what or with whom, but we're going to see. I'm just going to have myself, give myself a surprise, and we'll see. But thank you. And, well, be kind to yourself and to each other. And peace out, everybody. Have a great night.